I'm going to go over Unit 4, Lesson 3 practice problems. If I'm going too fast, it's because I only have 15 minutes to go over all of these problems before it times out. So you can always ask me additional questions in class. The first problem asks you to write an equation for this hanger, and each triangle represents x, and each square, the weight of each square is represented by y. So if I look on the left side of the hanger, this side, I have one triangle, which is going to be x. So I'm going to write x to represent that triangle. Plus, I have 3 squares, which is going to be 3y. And that's going to be equal to the right side of the hanger, where I have 4 triangles, which is going to be 4x. And then 1 square, which is going to be plus y. So I have this equation, and now I want to substitute 6 in for every x. So I'm going to have 6 plus 3y is equal to 4 times 6 plus y. And that's going to give me, when I simplify, 6 plus 3y is equal to 24 plus y. And then when I solve for y, I'm going to move y. I'm going to do SADMEP, and that means doing the reverse and opposite. So instead of adding y, I'm going to subtract y to make it disappear from the right side and appear on the left side. And that will leave me with 6, because this is just going to come on down, plus 2y equals 24. And I have not yet gotten y by itself, so that means the 6 has to go now. So I'm going to subtract 6. And that's going to leave me with, because this is going to cancel out, it's going to leave me with 2y, positive 2y, is equal to, and when I subtract this, I'm going to get 18. And then I'm going to further simplify and get y by itself by dividing by 2, and y equals 9. So that's number 1. And then number 2 wants you to match up A, B, C, D, and E to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so I'm probably going to be going through these faster than I need to. But like I said, if you need additional help on these, just please see me and ask me for some additional help. If you look in A, what happened in A to get from 6x plus 9 equals 4x minus 3 to 2x plus 9 equals negative 3? Well, the 9 stay the same on this side. The 6x got smaller by subtracting 4x to leave 2x, and then the 4x totally disappeared. So in order for that to happen, and I'm just going to work through this one so you can see what I'm saying. I had 6x plus 9 equals 4x minus 3, and that became 2x plus 9 equals negative 3. So that means this was removed and this changed also. Now, in order for that 4 to totally move from the right side, I got to subtract it away. I got to make it cancel out. So I'm going to I got to do the opposite inverse, because remember we're doing SADMAP. So the opposite and inverse of what I see, this is positive 4x, means that I will subtract positive 4x, right? And when I subtract 4x on the right, I got to do it on the left. And that's going to leave me with the 2x. And then everything else would be 2x plus 9 minus 3. And so when I go down here to pick a step that I used, there's no step that says subtract 4x. Remember, SADMAP is the opposite inverse. The opposite of subtract is add. So it's either going to be 4 or 5 that I pick, because both of those say add. 1, 2, and 3 all say multiply. So I'm either going to add negative 4x, or I'm going to be adding negative 4. Well, in order to make this whole term come over here to the left side and combine with 6x, I had to move the 4 and the x. So A is going to match up with 4. So I had to add 4x to both sides. And then B, in B, they remove you start with a negative 4 coefficient in front of the parentheses, and then it's gone. And then you have a negative 18 on the right, and then it gets smaller. So in order for that to happen, in order to get smaller, I'm either dividing or subtracting. Well, once again, I don't have subtract or divide in my list of options. So I have to figure out, and remember, SADMAP is opposite or reverse, okay, or opposite inverse. So in order to make this -4 coefficient completely go away, it'll look like this. So if I had -4 times 5x minus 7, and I want this -4 to completely be gone from in front of the parentheses, I have to divide by -4, because the same thing divided by the same thing is going to give me 1, and I don't have to write that 1. So if I don't write the 1, I'm just going to have 5x minus 7. And that's going to be equal to whatever I do on the left, I have to do on the right. So over here, I divided by -4. So I have to divide by -4 here. And then that's going to give me a negative divided by a negative, which makes a positive 4.5. So I actually did divide by -4, but that's not in the list of options to choose from. So then you have to ask yourself, if I have to divide by 4, dividing by 4 is the same thing as I'm going to do the opposite of the sign, which is multiply. And then I'm going to do the reciprocal of this. And this had to be a negative, sorry. So that's a negative. And the reciprocal is of -4. Remember, this has an understood denominator of 1. And the reciprocal means that the numerator and the denominator just do switcheroo. So instead of being the denominator, the 1 now becomes the numerator. And it's going to be a negative. So this means multiply. That's there to mean multiply. Because the opposite of divide means multiply or is multiply. And then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is -1/4. So that means that I'm going to be multiplying both sides by -1/4, which means I'm going to be actually doing 1. So B is going to match up with number 1. So B matches with number 1. And then if you look at C, C is pretty easy. 8 went down by 4. 10x and 10x stay the same, both negative. 7 went down to a 3. That means I subtracted 4. Plus 5x and plus 5x remain the same. So that means that I subtracted 4 from both sides. And down here doesn't say anything about subtract. So once again, we have to do the opposite inverse. The opposite of subtract is add. The opposite of 4 is -4. So that means C is going to match up with 5. So C matches with 5. And now I got to match up D. If I look in D, I went from having a fraction to not having a fraction. So that means I got rid of the denominator. This line right here means divide by. So divide by 4. And then this got increased from 4 to 16. Well, it's -16, which is really smaller, but I went from a 4 to a 16. So I had to figure out, how did I go from a 4 to a 16? Well, to go from a 4 to a 16, you need to multiply by 4. But I want -16, so I need to multiply by -4. And whatever I do on the left, I would do on the right. And if I multiply this by -4, so if I had this, just to show you, if I had -5/4 and the x, and I multiply it by -4, these 4's will cancel out and just leave me with -5x. So the answer choice that I would choose is, I would choose 2. So D matches with 2. And then by process of elimination, E matches with 3. And the reason E matches with 3 is because 12 went down by 4. Well, 12 didn't go down by 4. 12 got divided by 4 to give you 3. 4 got divided by 4 to give you 1. 20 got divided by 4 to give you 20x got divided by 4 to give you 5x, and 24 got divided by 4 to give you 6. Now there's no dividing in this list, so we know it had to be multiplied by its reciprocal. Divide by 4 means the reciprocal of divide by 4 is to multiply, or the opposite inverse of divide by 4 is to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 1/4. So E matches with 3. All right, and then number 2. In number 2, you had to, or problem number 3, sorry. Problem number 3 was pretty simple. You had to decide what was the first step Andre took and what was the first step that Diego took to get those next steps. The original equation is 2x plus 6 is equal to 3x minus 8. And Andre did something, and whatever he did left him with -x plus 6 equals negative 8. And if you look, the plus 6 and the plus 6 stay the same. The negative 8 and the negative 8 stay the same. So something happened. The x's got combined somehow and left with negative 1. Well, Andre subtracted 3x from both sides. And now I got a 2 subtracting a 3. That's going to leave me with a 1. And this 1 is here. You don't have to write it, but it's understood to be here. So you can put it there so you remember that it's there. But that would be negative 1x. So Andre's first step was to subtract negative 3x. Diego ended up with 6 equals 8 x minus 8. Well, still the 6 is the same. Still the negative 8 is the same. This time, Diego got a positive x. Well, that means Diego did the opposite of what, or he moved the other side, the number on the other side, the x term on the opposite side from Andre. So Diego subtracted 2x. So if I had this, 2x plus 6 is equal to 3x minus 8. Diego said subtract 2x from both sides. And then that will cancel out, disappear from that side and appear on this side, and be 6 is equal to x minus 8. All right, and then number 4, problem number 4 gives you this chart, and it also gives you this equation, and they want you to find the missing numbers basically. So all you have to do is plug and chug. So if my equation is 3x, if my equation is 3x plus y equals 15, and I have this chart of numbers, I know x is going to be 2. When I plug in x, I can figure out what y is. So I'm going to plug in a 2 for x. So I'm going to have 3 times 2 plus y equals 15. That's going to give me 6 plus y equals 15. If I subtract 6 from both sides, y is equal to 9. So I will plug in a 9 right here. So that will be a 9 underneath the 2. And then here I know what y is. So I'm going to plug it in for y and solve for x. So I'll have 3x, because I don't know x this time, plus I know y is going to be 3, is equal to 15. Subtract 3 from both sides, and 3x is going to be equal to 12. Divide by 3, and x is equal to 4. So I will plug in a 4 right here above the 3. And then I'll keep doing the same thing. So I'll plug in a 6 for x, and I'll have 3 times 6 plus y equals 15. Then I'll plug in a 0. 3 times 0 plus y equals 15. Then I'll plug in a 3. 3 times 3 plus y equals 15. Sorry about that. Equals 15. So right here, I'm going to get 18 plus y equals 15. This is going to end up with y equals negative 3 because I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. This one is going to be 0 plus y equals 15. Oops. And I don't have to write that plus 0, so that's basically just y equals 15. And then here's going to be 9 plus y equals 15. Y is going to be equal to 6. So I would plug in right here for 6. When I plugged in 6, the y is equal to negative 3. When I have 0, y is 15. When I have 3, y is 6. Now if I plug in a 0 for y, I'm going to have, let me find my cursor here. I'm going to have 3x plus 0 equals 15. And remember, I don't have to write the plus 0, so that's just 3x equals 15. Divide by 3, and x is going to be equal to 5. So I will put a 5 right here. And then for this one, I will plug in an 8 for y. So I have 3x plus 8 equals 15. Subtract 8 from both sides. And you're going to have 3x equals 7. Divide by 3 on both sides. and x is going to be equal to 7/3. So this will be canceled out, and x is